What happens when a brilliant gynecologist crosses paths with a billionaire desperate to save his family? This is not just a love story. It is a powerful, real-life journey of pain, hope, and a bond that would change countless lives. Stay with us, because what you are about to hear might just restore your faith in kindness and love. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon, so you never miss powerful, life-changing stories like this one. Glowing Star. Do not forget to like and share the channel, because here, it is not just entertainment. Every story carries a deep moral lesson that can inspire, heal, and uplift. Let's grow together, learn together, and make the world a kinder place. The most beautiful love story of a gynecologist and a billionaire you will see today. Do not skip. This is a real story. A story of love. A story of pain. A story of immeasurable work and deep understanding. Dr. Amara stood at the window of the maternity ward. The city lights shimmered beyond the glass. Her hands trembled as she held a letter. A letter that would change everything. The room was quiet, except for the soft beeping of monitors. She could hear the gentle breathing of newborns. The scent of antiseptic mixed with the sweetness of baby powder filled the air. Her heart raced. The letter was from Ethan Royce, a man whose name everyone knew. A billionaire with power and influence beyond imagination. But the words on the paper revealed none of that. It was a cry for help. A father desperate to save his child. A husband broken by his wife's silent suffering. Amara wiped a tear from her cheek. She had seen pain before. But this pain was different. It was raw. It was honest. It reached out and gripped her soul. She recalled the day Ethan walked into her clinic. His suit was perfect, but his face was pale. His eyes, usually sharp with business deals, were filled with fear. "My wife," he said. His voice cracked. "She is dying inside, and I do not know how to save her." Amara guided him to a chair. She listened as he spoke of nights spent beside his wife's hospital bed. Of the little boy who asked why Mama would not smile. Of the loneliness that filled their grand house. Ethan was not the man the world saw. He was a man with a heart heavy with love. A man lost in the maze of helplessness. Together, Amara and Ethan worked. Day and night, they fought for his wife's health. They studied reports. They called experts. They held hope when there was none. Amara visited their home one evening. The mansion was silent, like a castle waiting for joy to return. In the nursery, she saw the little boy, Liam. He clutched a stuffed bear, his eyes wide with questions no child should ask. Ethan knelt beside his son. His voice was soft. "We will make Mama better. We will, I promise." The weeks turned into months. The battle was fierce. There were nights when Amara sat by her patient's side, listening to the steady hum of machines. She felt the weight of every decision. She felt the responsibility of every heartbeat. Then came a night of storm. Rain lashed against the windows. Thunder rolled across the sky. And in the dim light of dawn, Ethan's wife opened her eyes. She smiled. A small, tired smile. But it was enough. Enough to fill the room with warmth. Enough to bring Ethan to his knees, tears falling freely. Amara stepped back, her own heart full. She had witnessed the power of love. A love that never gave up. A love that fought through pain, through fear, through despair. Ethan held his wife's hand. He whispered words only she could hear. And Liam, standing in the doorway, ran to them, laughter breaking the silence at last. It was a moment of victory. A moment of pure, unshakable love. A moment that would stay with them forever. But this was not the end. It was the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where they learned to cherish each day. Where they shared their story to give hope to others. And so, the most beautiful love story of a gynecologist and a billionaire became a light for many. A reminder that kindness, understanding, and relentless care can heal even the deepest wounds. The weeks that followed were filled with gentle mornings. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting golden patterns on the nursery floor. Liam would wake first, his small feet padding softly to his mother's room. He would curl beside her, his tiny hand resting on hers, as if to keep her safe. Ethan never left her side for long. Every meeting, every call, every demand of his vast empire could wait. Nothing mattered more than his family. Nothing could compare to seeing his wife smile again. Dr. Amara visited often. She became more than a doctor. She became part of their family. She shared quiet meals at their kitchen table. She read stories to Liam when his parents were too weary. Together, they planned his wife's recovery. There were long walks through their gardens. Slow steps at first, supported by Ethan's steady arm. But with each day, her strength returned. The staff in the house watched in awe. They saw a man of great wealth choose love over luxury. They saw a woman rise from the shadow of illness, her spirit unbroken. They saw a little boy's laughter fill the halls once more. There were difficult days, too. Days when fear returned, uninvited. When a sudden fever or a moment of weakness brought back old terror. But Amara was always there. Calm. Strong. Reminding them that healing was not a straight path. One autumn evening, as leaves drifted from the trees, Ethan stood on the balcony with Amara. The city stretched out before them, lights twinkling like stars. He spoke softly, his voice filled with gratitude. "I used to think I could solve anything with money," he said. "But what saved us was care. Your care. And the care we learned to give each other." Amara nodded, her eyes reflecting the city lights. "You saved each other," she said, "with love that never gave up." And so, the bond between them grew deeper. Not as billionaire and doctor, but as souls who had shared the weight of sorrow. As friends who had fought the storm together. Their stories spread quietly. Among patients. Among friends. Among strangers who needed hope. Families came to Amara, seeking not just medical skill, but understanding. They came believing in love's power to heal. Ethan and his wife opened a foundation. A place where parents could find help for their children. Where no one would feel alone in their darkest hour. Liam grew, kind and thoughtful, always remembering the time when love saved his family. And every year, on the day his mother first smiled again, they celebrated. Not with grand parties, but with simple moments. A walk in the garden. A shared meal. A quiet promise to never take a single day for granted. The story of the gynecologist and the billionaire did not end with recovery. It became a journey of giving. A journey of showing that kindness and perseverance could change the world. And as Amara stood once more at the window of her clinic, she saw the city differently now. Every light was a family. Every heartbeat was precious. Every tear deserved to be met with compassion. The work continued. The love endured. And the most beautiful love story you will see today kept shining, one act of care at a time. Amara's days grew longer, but they were filled with purpose. She rose with the sun, her heart steady with resolve. Every patient she met reminded her of Ethan's family. Every mother's fear, every father's silent worry, every child's uncertain future. She listened. She comforted. She fought for each of them as fiercely as she had for Ethan's wife. Ethan visited often, no longer as a man desperate for help, but as a partner in hope. He would bring stories of families helped by their foundation. He would share letters from parents who once felt lost but now found strength. One evening, after a long day at the hospital, Amara stood on the rooftop garden Ethan had built for the staff. The air was cool, filled with the scent of jasmine. She watched the city hum below, lights flickering like fireflies. Ethan joined her, his coat dusted with the evening chill. They spoke of the future. Of building clinics in places where mothers walked for miles to find help. Of training doctors who treated not just bodies, but hearts and souls. Amara's eyes glistened as she listened. She saw in Ethan what the world often missed. Not just a billionaire. Not just a man of influence. But a man who had learned that true wealth was found in giving. Days turned into seasons. Liam grew taller, his laughter stronger. His mother's health blossomed, and with it, the family's joy deepened. There were times when storms came again. An illness here. A setback there. But by now, they all knew the way through. Together. The mansion, once cold and echoing, became a place of welcome. A place where those in need could knock and find help. A place where the walls held stories of courage and kindness. Amara often found herself in the nursery, where Liam would show her his drawings. Pictures of his family holding hands. Of a house filled with light. Of a doctor with a warm smile. Ethan's wife would join them, her eyes bright with gratitude. She would speak softly of the nights when Amara's presence kept her fears at bay. Of how she found strength, knowing someone cared beyond duty. And so, their story continued. A story woven from sleepless nights, quiet victories, and endless compassion. A story that taught everyone who heard it that love, when true and tireless, could heal even the deepest wounds. And in the heart of the city, where the lights never dimmed, Amara and Ethan kept their promise. To care. To serve. To share hope, one family at a time. The foundation grew, its walls filled with photographs of smiling children. Letters of thanks lined the corridors, each one a testament to lives changed. Families from distant towns came, drawn by the promise of care without judgment, help without cost. Amara walked those halls often, pausing to greet every parent, every child. She remembered each story, each face, as if they were her own family. Her voice was always gentle, her eyes steady with kindness. Ethan was never far. He would visit the wards, sitting beside fathers who felt powerless, mothers who felt forgotten. He would listen, truly listen, and offer not just his wealth, but his time, his heart. Liam, growing older, would follow him, watching, learning. He began to understand what his parents and Amara had taught him. That strength was not in riches or titles, but in how you lifted others. One winter morning, the city lay quiet under a blanket of snow. Amara arrived early at the foundation, her breath visible in the cold air. Inside, a mother waited, clutching her newborn, tears frozen on her cheeks. Without hesitation, Amara took the child in her arms. She felt the tiny heartbeat, the fragile warmth. She whispered softly, soothing both mother and child. Ethan arrived moments later, his coat dusted with snowflakes. He saw them there, and his heart filled once more with that deep, quiet awe. Awe for the woman who had taught him the true meaning of care. The mother's story was one of hardship, of long nights and empty cupboards. But in that moment, none of that mattered. She had found shelter. She had found people who would not let her face her struggles alone. Amara and Ethan worked through the day, arranging food, warm clothes, a safe place to stay. When the mother finally smiled, exhausted but relieved, it was as if the sun had broken through the clouds. As night fell, Ethan stood at the window of the foundation. The city lights sparkled against the snow. He thought of the journey that had brought him here. Of the fear that had once gripped his heart. Of the hands that had reached out and lifted him. He turned to Amara, who stood beside him, quiet and thoughtful. "We have so much more to do," he said. And she nodded, a soft smile on her face. Together, they stepped back into the halls, ready for whatever the next day would bring. Ready to write new chapters in the most beautiful love story of care, of friendship, of family. A story that, even now, was far from over. Spring arrived, bringing with it the scent of fresh blossoms that drifted through the open windows of the foundation. Children's laughter echoed in the courtyard where small gardens bloomed, planted by the families who had found refuge there. Every corner of the place breathed with new life, with hope gently stitched into its very walls. Amara rose each morning before dawn, her steps light, her heart steady. She made her rounds quietly, pausing at every crib, at every bed, at every worried face. She offered comfort where words failed, and strength where spirits faltered. Ethan was there too, as he had been every day. He met with families, shared warm meals in the simple dining hall, knelt to tie a child's shoe, listened as parents poured out their fears. No task was too small. No moment of kindness wasted. Liam often ran ahead of him, his pockets full of tiny toys that he would give to children who had none. He knew, in his young heart, that he was part of something greater. That his family story was now joined with so many others. And yet, there were still nights when the past crept in. Nights when Ethan would wake, his heart pounding, the memory of his wife's illness still too near. He would find her awake too, and they would sit together, holding hands, watching the stars beyond the glass. They said little in those moments. They did not need to. Amara understood this unspoken sorrow. She saw it in other couples, in other parents. And she worked even harder, knowing how fragile peace could be. One day, as the sun set in shades of gold and rose, a family arrived at the foundation's doors. A father, gaunt and tired. A mother, pale and trembling, holding a child too weak to cry. Without hesitation, Amara and Ethan welcomed them inside. They gathered the staff, prepared a bed, brought food and blankets. Amara examined the child with care, her hands steady, her voice calm. That night, Ethan stayed by the father's side as he wept quietly. He shared his own story. He spoke of fear, of helplessness, of the long road through the storm. And the father listened, his burden eased by knowing he was no longer alone. The days that followed were filled with tireless work. Every small improvement in the child's health was a victory. Every smile from the mother was a gift. And through it all, Amara and Ethan remained steadfast. Their bond, forged in hardship, only grew stronger. Their love for humanity, for each family they served, became the heartbeat of the foundation. The city around them continued to change. But within those walls, one truth remained. That the most beautiful love story was not only about a gynecologist and a billionaire. It was about all those who dared to care. All those who stood together against pain and fear. All those who believed that love could indeed heal the world. As the seasons turned once more, the foundation became a place known far beyond the city. People spoke of it as a house of healing, where no one was turned away. Stories traveled, whispered between neighbors, carried by grateful hearts. Amara found herself busier than ever, but her spirit never wavered. She moved through the wards with quiet purpose, her presence a comfort to all. Every patient saw in her not just a doctor, but a friend who truly understood. Ethan dedicated more of his life to this work. Business meetings grew fewer. Charity meetings filled his days. He used his influence not to build wealth, but to build hope. Liam grew tall and kind-hearted, a reflection of all that he had witnessed. He helped in small ways, reading stories to children, helping plant new flowers in the gardens, learning from his parents what it meant to serve. One bright morning, a woman arrived at the foundation's gates. Her clothes were worn, her eyes hollow with exhaustion. Beside her stood a little girl, clutching a ragged doll, too tired to smile. Amara welcomed them in. She knelt to the child's level, brushing a curl from her forehead. "You are safe now," she said softly. And the child, hearing truth in those words, leaned into her with a sigh of relief. That evening, as the sun painted the sky in soft pinks and oranges, Ethan joined Amara on the steps of the foundation. They watched as families gathered in the courtyard, sharing simple meals, laughter slowly returning to faces lined by worry. Ethan spoke, his voice low with wonder. "Do you ever think about how far we have come?" Amara nodded, her gaze warm. "Every day. But I also see how much more we can do." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the soft hum of life around them. The rustle of leaves in the breeze. The quiet murmur of voices filled with gratitude. The sweet giggles of children who, at last, felt free to play. And so, their work continued. Not for praise. Not for glory. But because they knew the power of love that does not give up. Together, with every act of care, every hand extended in kindness, they wrote new pages in the story. A story that belonged not just to them, but to every soul who entered that place. A story of endless compassion. A story still unfolding, with no end in sight. The years passed, and the foundation stood stronger than ever. Its walls bore witness to countless lives touched by kindness. Its halls echoed with the voices of those who once came in despair but left with hope. Amara grew older, her hair silvered with time, but her heart remained as steadfast as on the very first day. Ethan, too, walked those familiar corridors, his steps slower now, but his spirit unchanged. Liam, now a young man, worked beside them, ready to carry their mission forward. One quiet evening, as the sun set behind the city's skyline, Amara and Ethan stood together on the rooftop garden. The air was warm, filled with the scent of blooming jasmine. Below them, the lights of the foundation glowed gently, like stars fallen to earth. They watched as families shared meals, as children played, as nurses moved from room to room with care. And in that moment they knew. The love that had begun in hardship had grown into something far greater. Ethan turned to Amara, his voice filled with gratitude. "We dreamed of helping one family. But look what love built." Amara smiled, her eyes soft and wise. "It was never just us, Ethan. It was every hand that chose to lift another. Every heart that chose to care. And so their story came to rest, not with an ending, but with a lesson that would live on. That true wealth is not measured by what you have, but by what you give. That the greatest strength lies in compassion. That love, when shared, can heal not just one family, but the world. May we all remember the power of kindness. And may we, like Amara and Ethan, choose to be the light in someone's darkest hour.